sometimes it's useful to have more than one piece of data all wrapped up together. So for example, here I have a CD data type, and it contains the name of the CD, the artist, the person who recorded the CD, the price, and the CD label, the company that produced it. And you can see I've declared that as a record type. Now the way to declare a record is to have the name, the type identifier, that's CD in this case, and then one or more field identifiers. These are the bits of data, the variables that are contained in the record. And each one must be followed by a colon and its data type, and of course a semicolon at the end. And then you end the record with the keyword end. So record begins the record, end ends the definition of the record. Let's have a quick look at this program. You can see here when the form is created, I've created first of all a single CD up here, and then I have an array of 4 CDs called my CDs. And I've just initialized the single CD and the array of CDs in this code. So let's run it and see what happens. Right, first of all, I'll show the data of the single CD, and then if I just move this down here so you can see it, and then I will look at the array of CDs. So first of all I show all 4, and you can see that the data is all displayed. Then I can find a specific CD, so I've got the index into the array here. That's the first CD at index 1, and it shows that CD. I'll look at the 4th one at index 4, and it shows that one. If I enter an index that is invalid, then I get this error message. And if I enter, now this is something quite important to bear in mind in a real-world program, somebody might enter something that makes no sense at all. They could enter a character such as X, and you need to deal with it and display some sort of meaningful error message rather than just let your program crash. Let's quickly look at the code. So that's where I've initialized the data, as you can see. Now when I click the button to show a single CD, this is the procedure that executes. So it just clears the memo, and then it adds the data from the CD using the format function, which we've looked at before, to put in the name, the artist, the CD label, and the price. Now notice the dot notation. ACD is the name of the variable. Let's look at that, where it's been declared up here. So ACD is of the CD data type. Let's look at the CD data type. That's declared in the type section up here. So those are the fields of the record. So when I want to access any particular piece of information, I use the variable name, that's ACD, followed by a dot, followed by the field name. Now let's have a look at this method, which shows all the CDs in my array. So this uses a now familiar looking for loop to iterate through all the array elements, and for each element it calls show CD, and that's a method that I've written, and this is show CD. So this is just like the procedure I showed a moment ago when I showed a single CD. The only difference is that this time it takes an index into the array, and when the format function displays the data, it indexes into the array first, then it puts the dot, then it puts the field name. So I'm still using dot notation to look inside the record variable. And finally, on find CD. Now this has this section here, try, except, and end. That whole block of code is my exception handling block. It deals with errors. Exceptions are error types, and I don't really want to go into too much detail at this point because I'll be looking at how to handle exceptions in some depth later on in the course. Bear in mind that for now, I call in the try section the str to int to try to convert the text entered into the edit1 text box into an integer. That will work if somebody's entered something like 1, 2, 3, 4, but it won't work if they enter X or some other alphabetic character or some sort of string. If they do that, then the except part deals with the error that's generated. That would be a convert error, convert error. And it shows a message. It says you must enter a number. And it sets, in this case, a Boolean variable to false, so that the next part of the code, if OK, if that's false, that does not execute. That only executes if a real valid integer was entered and the conversion succeeded. Then it checks if the integer is greater than 0 and it's less than 5. In other words, is it somewhere between 1 and 4? Because my array is indexed from 1 to 4. If so, it just calls show CD to display the details of that record. So in a very simple way, that's how to create record types. Think of a record as like a box that wraps up various pieces of information. So look again at how I declared the CD record. CD is the name of my type, so I can create variables of the CD type, as I've done down here. And once I have a variable of that type, I can access the internal data fields, name, artist, price, CD label, using dot notation, acd dot name, acd dot artist, and so on. Now, records become more useful when you've got some way of adding new records to a database, or modifying records and saving them to disk. At that point, you can start to create programs that work a bit like a commercial database. Something like Microsoft Access lets you create new records and save your data to disk. And I'll find out how you can create and modify records and save and load them in another video that accompanies this chapter.